Akashvani Bengaluru.
It's very important to understand that young people and adolescents, their brains are not the same as adults. They're at a critical stage of brain development where they are particularly susceptible to social suggestion and social comparison, and their impulse control hasn't fully developed. And companies are very, very good at using cutting-edge neuroscience and behavioral science and using the best product engineers in the world and putting lots of resources toward ensuring that we maximize how much time we are spending on the platforms.
Welcome to this special interview with Vice Admiral Dr. Vivek Murthy, US Surgeon General, on Impact of Social Media on the Youth. The interviewer is Dr. Suresh Bada, Professor of Psychiatry at NIMHANS, Bengaluru.
I am Dr. Suresh Bada, Professor of Psychiatry at NIMHANS, Bangalore. It's an absolute privilege to welcome truly distinguished guest on All India Radio today, Vice Admiral Dr. Vivek Murthy, the current US Surgeon General. Dr. Vivek Murthy is a Harvard graduate who pursued medicine at the Yale School of Medicine, followed by MBA from Yale School of Management, appointed initially the past President Obama, later reappointed by President Joe Biden. He continues to lead the groundbreaking National Health Initiative. He is also the author of best-selling book, Together, The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. Dr. Murthy is widely recognized for his dedication to promoting wellness, resilience, and the vital role of human connection in health. His work has left a lasting impact on public health. In addition to his leadership, he is actively engaged in philanthropic efforts and collaborates with NGOs to advance his mission of improving global well-being. Dr. Murthy, thank you for joining us today. It is truly an honor to have you with us on All India Radio.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here with you.
Okay, to start, could you share a bit about your journey? What inspired you to pursue a career in medicine and then administration and public health, eventually leading you to serve as a US Surgeon General?
My path has been an unexpected one. I didn't plan it all out, but my inspiration to go into medicine originally came from my mother and father. My mother grew up in Bangalore. My father grew up in a small farming village, Halagere, about 2 hours outside of Bangalore near Mandya. And when I was growing up, they built a medical clinic in Miami, Florida, in the United States. And as a child, I spent a lot of time in that clinic. I didn't understand much about science at that point. I was 7, 8, 9 years old. But what I did understand is that people were coming in to see them looking stressed and worried, and they were leaving feeling better and knowing that they had a partner in their healing process. And the beautiful relationships my parents were building really stayed with me over time and inspired me ultimately to go into medicine.
Okay, from medicine you moved on to administration, MBA, and then public health. So you have moved from one to another. So how it happened? It's by chance or?
Yeah, a lot of my life has been by chance.
Okay.
It has been unexpected opportunities, unexpected challenges as well that have shaped ultimately my path. Public health was interesting because I didn't think of going into public health early on. When I was in the clinic with my mother and father, I was mainly then thinking about being a doctor. But my journey to public health actually started here in Bangalore, because even though I was living in the United States at the time, I had come over in the summer of 1994 with my sister at a time when HIV and AIDS were increasing in India. And I had started to learn then about what was happening here and about the importance of preventive education. So in 1995, my sister and I began what became our first nonprofit organization to mobilize young people to do workshops and public education around HIV. And we began that effort here in Bangalore in the summer of 1995, going to schools and colleges in Bangalore and conducting workshops, but also recruiting students to do the greater education that was needed in communities. And we extended that work to Bombay, to Delhi. We built more chapters in the United States. And then the journey built from there. There was another chapter to it, which was that in 1997, we began another organization based actually in Sringeri, where we were training young women in the villages to be community health workers. And it was incredibly inspiring for me to see how they, in a relatively short time, went from being people who others perhaps didn't notice in the village to being leaders, sources of education, sources of advice for people, and basic healthcare providers. So those experiences here in India had a powerful impact on me and pulled me into the world of public health.
Amazing, amazing story. regarding this, your best-selling book, Together, the Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. What made you to write this book?
Well, like the rest of my life, I never planned to write a book on this subject. And I actually didn't plan to focus on the issue of loneliness. But what happened to me is when I first began my tenure as Surgeon General, when President Obama was in office, I was traveling around the United States speaking with people to get a sense of how I could be helpful. This is something that I was taught in medical school that most doctors are taught, and you'll recognize this yourself, Suresh, but we were taught to start our journey by listening to patients.
Yes.
And even though we might think we know what we want to do when we go in the exam room, sometimes what the patient tells you will change what your plan is. And so in a similar fashion, I thought I should begin my time as Surgeon General by listening. So we organized a listening tour. And what surprised me is on that listening tour were many stories of isolation and loneliness. We tend to have a stereotype of loneliness in our mind. We think it's perhaps somebody who's older in life who has lost loved ones and is living by themselves. But loneliness can look like many different things. And the story that I was often getting was that of a young person in university or in high school who was saying, I'm surrounded by all of these other students, but nobody really knows me. I feel like I can't be myself, and I feel very alone. So understanding how common loneliness was led me to dig into the science around loneliness, which is where I came to realize that when we are socially disconnected from each other, our risk of depression and anxiety go up, but our risk of heart disease and dementia and premature death go up as well. So social connection is vital to our health, and that's what ultimately led me to start working on it.
This is a paradigm shift understanding about health. Mm-hmm. Thinking about loneliness was not there at all. And definitely, in your book, you have mentioned that single best gift you can give to your loved one is attention. Can you please explain on this attention, how it's done?
Yes, well, I had a teacher in high school who once said to me, Vivek, the most important thing you can give to your parents, more than gifts or money, is your time. Make sure you're spending time with the people you love. And I remember that advice because it was really true. But one of the things that's happened to the time that we spend with the people we love, it has become distracted time, right? As we're on our devices a lot, or we're paying attention to something else around us. And that really dilutes the quality of our social connection. Many people can relate to this because they probably had the experience of being in conversation with somebody and realizing that they weren't fully paying attention because they were on their phone. They were checking their inbox, their email. They were looking at their social media account, checking the news, looking at sports scores. And we think that we can multitask and just do both. But the science on multitasking is very clear, that we actually can't multitask. When we think we're multitasking, our brain is rapidly switching between tasks. And people know that. They feel that. So one of the most powerful things we can do today to stretch time is to give people the gift of our attention. And 5 minutes of fully focusing on somebody in conversation can lead us to feel more connected to them than sometimes half an hour of distracted conversation.
So if I understood correctly, it is the quality time rather than the quantity of time.
It's the quality of time that matters. And we should remember this too. Many people in the world are walking around today feeling invisible, like their lives don't matter. And when you give somebody the benefit of your full attention, what you're telling them is, I see you, you matter. And that is a powerful message to be able to send.
That's a very interesting one. Dr. Murthy, you have identified loneliness as a major public health issue, even describing it as an epidemic. Could you share your insight on why loneliness is so prevalent today and how it impacts physical and mental health?
So loneliness is a problem in many countries. There was a recent Gallup survey that was done in 2023, which showed that countries like the United States, India, the United Kingdom, and many others are struggling with loneliness. And this is, in fact, one of the reasons why last year in December, we launched the World Health Organization Commission on Social Connection, recognizing that loneliness is becoming a global challenge and a global health challenge. And so this is an issue we've got to take on together. The thing that's important to realize about loneliness is that it's being driven by multiple factors. On the one hand, in modern society, we move around more, right? We change jobs more. And sometimes that means that we leave communities behind. We know also that technology has brought a lot of blessings into our life and efficiencies and conveniences, but it's also made it less necessary for us to interact with each other, right, in stores or in the grocery store, for example. And so when you can get everything delivered to you, we lose a lot of those, incidental interactions we have with others. And those actually, we used to write those off as not important. They really do matter. But finally, I think for many people, the experience of social media has been mixed. It has had some benefits in terms of bringing information into their lives, helping them stay connected with old friends. But often it has actually transferred many of our in-person interactions and relationships online. And the truth is they're not equivalent. In-person relationships are much more powerful than online relationships. That's not to say there's no role for online interaction, but we need online interactions to supplement, not replace, the in-person interactions that we have. And I worry that over time, you see, even the course of our lifetime, the last 15 years, we've gone from valuing friends to valuing followers, from prizing our confidants to asking how many contacts do we have, on social media. And this shift from quality to quantity of relationships, I think, has come at the expense of our social connection.
How to make this being connected or being together a national policy so that the world is truly connected?
Well, to build social connection, first we have to make the case for it being a priority for the country and the world. And when we understand the health impact, that helps us. But we also have to understand that the impact of social connection goes beyond health, that communities that are more socially connected are actually more economically prosperous. They have lower rates of violence. They have greater resilience in the face of disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, and other challenges. And it makes sense because, for example, I remember when I went through a major hurricane in Miami, Florida, in the summer of 1992, Hurricane Andrew, what really helped our community was that neighbors showed up and started assisting each other, with making sure everyone had food and water. And if they couldn't get out of their house, that they, everybody came together to help and pull them out. These are the things that neighbors did. But if we didn't know each other, we wouldn't have those opportunities to help. We wouldn't have those resources in our lives. So we've got to make the case that social connection is a health and economic priority, but it also should be looked at through the lens of education and national security. We know that when children are feeling more socially connected, that affects their educational outcomes. We know that when communities are actually divided and lonely, it makes them more susceptible to polarization and division. And so if we understand that, then we can make this a priority. Making it a priority has to come through programs, policies, and individual action. The kind of policies I've called for in the United States and the reports we have issued have been an investment in social infrastructure. These are the policies, but physical structures and programs that we invest in as government to help create spaces where people can gather, where they can build good relationships. But we can also, as government, invest in research to better understand where loneliness is affecting populations the most, who is most at risk, and what interventions work. In terms of community programs, though, many of the organizations that historically have played a role in our lives, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, faith organizations, temples, mosques, churches, they can all be a really powerful force in helping to gather and bring people together in person, which is what we need to do more of. But finally, I would just say as individuals, there's something we can do too. And a few simple things I'd recommend to people is, number one, take 5 minutes a day to reach out to somebody you care about. It could be a brief phone call on the way to work or school. It could be stopping by on the way home to visit somebody. But those 5 minutes just to check on somebody can be very powerful. Second, if you can make sure in your life that you create technology-free zones to interact with others, where you can give them the benefit of your full attention, you can really deepen the power of the interaction with them. And third, each day we should find one small thing we can do to serve others. It could be helping somebody who's having a difficult time at school or at the office. It could be reaching out to support a friend who is in crisis. These small acts of service are the glue that binds us together and helps us build the connection we need.
Okay, that's fabulous. So, the listeners, please, I'm emphasizing on that. Please have 5 minutes with your loved ones, be connected with them, have technology-free zone, and help others. These are the very important points what Dr. Murthy has said. Dr. Murthy, moving on to this, as you mentioned the togetherness and connected, currently the world is connected through internet, social media. There are thousands or 2,000 friends and subs and subscribers. Do you think still people are disconnected?
I do. I think, again, there are benefits that have come from technology and social media. I think have fallen into the trap, believing that that is a replacement for the in-person relationships that we have. Unfortunately, I think come to, in many ways, value the quality, the quantity of connections more than the quality of connections. And I think there we need to rebalance our approach to technology, re-engineer our relationship, if you will, with social media. And I say this because this is literally what I hear from young people in particular, all over the United States and in other countries as well. So many students tell me that even though they're on social media a lot, for many hours a day, that they still feel like there's nobody who understands them. They can't fully be themselves with others. And those are the relationships that often matter the most for us when it comes to feeling like we belong. Question is, at 3 o'clock in the morning, if you have a crisis, who can you call? Who's going to be there for you? These are the questions that we need to ask and design our lives around answering.
Dr. Murthy, given the significant influence of social media on youth mental health, what specific regulatory changes do you propose for social media platform to prioritize youth mental health?
Well, look, I think that addressing the harms of social media is something that every country now needs to grapple with and think about how best to approach. What I've recommended in the United States is that we put in place laws and regulations that help protect children from harm in the following way. Number one, requiring social media companies to disclose all of the data that they have about the health impact of their platform on adolescents. Right now, researchers cannot get full access to that data. And I worry, and I say this as a parent too, myself, parent of two children, that I never want to feel that a product that my children are using, a company who's making those products is hiding information for me about its safety. So we need that data transparency. The second thing we need is to ensure that companies protect children from exposure to harmful content. This is pornographic content, excessive violence, bullying and harassment, including from strangers, which happens all too often on social media. It also includes videos and content that would encourage young people to harm themselves and in some cases take their own lives. Right. And if this seems like an extreme situation, I will tell you that I have sat myself with parents and with children who have been served this content on social media. And in some cases, the parents actually lost their child to suicide. And so we have to protect kids from this kind of content. And finally, regulations can help also protect children from exposure to features on social media that would seek to lure their developing brains into excessive use. It's very important to understand that young people and adolescents, their brains are not the same as adults. They're at a critical stage of brain development where they are particularly susceptible to social suggestion and social comparison, and their impulse control hasn't fully developed. And companies are very, very good at using cutting-edge neuroscience and behavioral science and using the best product engineers in the world and putting lots of resources toward ensuring that we maximize how much time we are spending on the platforms. But in the United States, adolescents are spending on average 5 hours a day on social media alone. I'm not talking about screens for school. I'm talking about social media alone. 5 hours a day. That's the average, which means that there are many who are spending 6-7 hours a day as well. That comes at the expense of our in-person time with others, our sleep, our physical activity, our learning. And that is why those kind of addictive features are ones that we need to protect our children against. This is a place where companies have not done enough on their own. They've had nearly 20 years to do so, and it is high time for us to step up and protect our children.
Okay, so this is one of the very controversial question. Like very often doctors are asked, should parents monitor their children on time or on screen time? What do you think? Should we monitor or should we not monitor?
I think it's very important for parents to understand how their children are using technology. And that's not just about how many hours they're putting into it, but what are they actually doing when they're using technology? Too often we don't actually have conversations with our children about this. But I think this is a place where dialogue between parents and children is really vital. Understanding why your child uses social media in particular, what their experiences are. Are they being harassed by others? Is it making them feel better or worse? These are all vital for parents to understand so that we can also build the kind of agreements with our children that will help them get benefits and not experience harms. But it's also important for us as parents to lead by example. So many students tell me that they get irritated because their parents are on their phones all the time, right? And they can't have a conversation with them at the dinner table. So this isn't just a problem with young people. This is, all of us have been affected in many ways by our devices. And so we have to be thoughtful about setting a good example as well. And finally, I think what's important in thinking about usage is to protect the parts of a child's life that are really vital. I think often about what we call the proverbial big rocks in your life, the things that are your top priorities. You want to protect those first, and everything else you can fit into your life if there's room. So that in a child's life, we know for their development that sleep is important, that in-person interaction is important, physical activity is essential, and learning is critical. We have to make sure our kids have enough time and space for all of these. And that could look like telling our kids that we are taking all devices away from them an hour before bedtime, right? And we can charge all our devices in the kitchen, but throughout the night, they can focus on the quality of their sleep. Because right now, a lot of people, adults as well, are waking up in the middle of the night for a glass of water to use the bathroom, and then they end up checking their devices, and they end up staying up for longer. That distracts from both quality and quantity of sleep. So that's just one example of what we can do. We can also, as parents, say that our meal times, when we're eating together, are going to be technology-free zones. We're going to focus on talking to each other. So in this way, parents do need to be involved in the experience that children are having. And it's also good for parents because it'll help them understand more of the technology that's out there and how it's impacting their kids.
So listeners, please remember that you need to not only monitoring, it's important to have a dialogue with your kid, how to use it and when to use it, and be a role model for this. Dr. Murthy, being the someone close ties with both US and India, what are the areas of public health do you see as a most promising for collaboration between both countries?
One of the things I think that is important to underscore, and something I'm very happy about and proud about, is the long history of health collaboration between the United States and India. We have decades of collaboration between our scientists, our public health experts, and that has been vital for addressing issues from polio and COVID-19, tuberculosis and HIV, and many other illnesses as well. These collaborations, again, have not only helped India and the United States, but they've brought benefit to the rest of the world. And when I think about the future, I think about the rise in chronic disease like diabetes and high blood pressure, which both our countries are struggling with. This is an area around chronic disease where we have a vital role to build and strengthen our partnership. I think also about the threat of infectious disease. We just lived through the COVID-19 pandemic, which turned so many of our lives upside down. But in the future, at some point, there will be another pandemic. We know that infectious disease threats are evolving. And so working together to ensure that we can invest in research around vaccinations and other countermeasures so that we can work hard to develop and distribute those efficiently, that is going to be vital. The third and final area I'd mention has to do with mental health. This is an area we're increasingly waking up to around the world as one that is vital, and not just for how we feel, but for our physical health, for our economic productivity, our educational performance. And if we don't invest in mental health, it will cost us on all of these dimensions. So how we do that and how we address the root causes of what's driving the mental health struggles, among the population, these are areas that we can work on together while we also work to increase and expand access to care.
As we are discussing about the research and collaboration, see, artificial intelligence is revolutionizing many fields, including healthcare. What role do you see AI playing a role in mental health care and also the collaboration?
I think artificial intelligence is going to transform our lives. It already is starting to, and health is one of those areas. I think there are a lot of potential benefits that AI can bring when it comes to making better diagnoses, getting treatments to people, expanding access to care. But I think if we take a lesson from our experience with social media, we realize that technology comes with harms and benefits. And unless we're thoughtful about building the safety guardrails, about monitoring the impact, the full impact on the population, and unless we have the courage to move quickly when it comes to changing course, if there are harms, then unfortunately we are going to experience the harms as well. And when it comes to AI, I think we have to be clear on what we are seeking to get. When it comes to mental health, if we can use technology to better diagnose and more quickly diagnose, more efficiently diagnose people, if we can use technology to understand when people are in a state of risk, even before they have severe depression, for example, or diagnosable anxiety, then we can intervene earlier. We can help them understand what shifts they need to make in their own life in order to prevent, for example, a major depressive episode. We can also bring care to people more effectively. We've already seen this in the revolution around telemedicine, whether it's telemanas here in India or whether it's the explosion during COVID-19 that we saw, telemedicine that's now providing behavioral health care in the United States. Around the world, we've seen technology improve access to care. But there's a lot more to go because there are still many people who don't have access to the care they need.
That's a very beautiful way of putting across. Regarding the access to healthcare, definitely will be made possible through AI. Finally, Dr. Murthy, what advice would you give to young people or young doctors who aspire to make a difference in public health, and how can they be best prepared themselves for a meaningful career in this field?
Well, this is a really important time, an exciting time to be in the world of public health. And to anybody out there who's in school and university who's thinking about what career to follow, but also for adults who may have a career and might be thinking about what else they can do next or looking for a career change, I would encourage you to think about health. The way I got started in health was actually not even by going to a formal training program. It started with being in a community and trying to understand what people's needs are. It started with volunteering with people who were in public health to open my eyes up to what the health challenges were the communities were facing and how we could address them. The important thing is to start somewhere, whether that's being a volunteer, whether that's reading more about the public health challenges we face, and then to recognize and ask the question, what can I as an individual start doing to make a difference? You don't have to solve every problem. You don't have to solve the problem for millions of people. But if you can start making a difference through education, through interventions in a few people's lives, that's how you can begin your journey to health. And I'll just say that working in public health and in medicine has been so incredibly rewarding for me. I feel so grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of people's lives and communities in this work, to have learned so much from the people that I have met as well. And I'll say as we close that it's also meant a lot to me that journey started for me here in India when it comes to public health. India is a country that has shaped me profoundly. It's the land of my ancestors. It's where my parents grew up. The fundamental values that shaped me came from my parents, and they drew that from their Indian culture and heritage. And those were values around the importance of relationship and community, the importance of being there for friends, the importance of dedicating your life to serving others and building up your community. These were all things that my parents got from their upbringing in India that they passed on to my sister and I, and this is what fundamentally shaped our lives. So I'm very grateful to India for that, as well on a personal note. I think whether it's India or the United States, we have big public health challenges that we're facing. We need talented, thoughtful, kind and compassionate people to dedicate themselves to helping address those problems. And if we do that together, then I have no doubt that the future will be bright, that we'll be able to take care of our kids, and that will ultimately give everyone the support that they need.
Dr. Murthy, thank you for sharing your valuable time and insight today. Your dedication to public health is truly inspiring, and we are grateful for this conversation on All India Radio.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to do this with you.
Thank you to all our listeners for joining us today. Stay healthy, stay connected, stay together, and keep tuning into All India Radio. I'm Dr. Suresh, logging off.
You are listening to a special interview with Vice Admiral Dr. Vivek Murthy, U.S. Surgeon General, on impact of social media on the youth. Interviewer was Dr. Suresh Bada, Professor of Psychiatry at NIMHANS, Bengaluru. Edited by Nandan Kumar Elo. Coordinated by Nutan S. Kadam. This program came to you from the studios of Akashvani Bengaluru.